fields and up in the clouds, but I've always felt that something's missing. That was until I found you right there in the crowd. You came into my life and started a fire. You made me feel like I could touch the sky. Oh, there's nothing missing now that you're my desire. Now all I have to do is to make you mine. 'Cause I know, and you know what we could be. Like a song, like a perfect melody. Baby, don't say you don't believe in me. 'Cause you know, and I know, we're onto something good. You know, and I know, we got something good.
I think that's why you're here, because you know that Conversations with Kim talk show has something good. Thank you so much for joining me on this awesome Sunday. We are in for a treat today. As you know, this month has been National Women's History Month, and this is the climax of that series on women. So if you have not had an opportunity to see all of the content that was shared, please, I beg you, go back, take a look at all of the segments that we shared this month, because they are specifically for us women, and I brought the business this time. So, you know how we do, Village. I want you to like and share, please, please, please. I also want you to get involved in the comments. This is a community, and I want to know that when I go back into the comments, not that you just said hello, which I appreciate. Hi, everybody. But I want to know that the content is on point and you are co-signing, and whatever you need to add to help another woman, please do that. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest today. And I got a lot. Usually I just say a little bit, but today I couldn't hold back. Listen, he has completed his undergraduate degree at Texas A&M University. He received his medical degree at Baylor College of Medicine, which is one of the premier medical schools in the country. He completed his OBGYN training at the Air Force's flagship medical center, Wilford Hall, at Lakeland Air Force Base. He served his country as a physician. He is a member of Kappa Alpha Psi, and he currently is the president of the Texas Association of OBGYN. Isn't that impressive? So we don't have a lightweight. Please, Village, help me welcome Dr. John Phopel.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for having me, Kim. I'm honored to be here with you, Village. I am so happy to be able to share information. We hope to have some great questions along the way, and let's talk about the change. Let's talk about menopause.
Yes, hormones and the change. I feel like this is the place to kind of climax this whole series for women this month, because this is probably the last stage of change that a woman goes through in her body. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so let's talk about definitions for a second. So
okay.
You have perimenopause, right? Which is the years and the time before the actual transition. So that can be an 8 to 10 year window as hormones fluctuate. And we'll talk about some of these symptoms in a minute. Menopause is literally just one day in your life. That is the day that you did not have a period for a year. And then everything after that, hopefully many, many years after that, is postmenopause. And so there's different sort of things that go along with that. Now, one very interesting thing is, so the average age of menopause in the country is 51. Women of color, both Latinx plus Black women, are likely to go to menopause 1 to 2 years earlier than white women. So, and women of color generally have more symptoms when we do research studies. Worse hot flashes, worse vaginal dryness than our Caucasian counterparts. So this is a really relevant topic.
Wow. Yeah. So, and so it doesn't necessarily happen in the mid 40s at all. I mean,
So the transition often starts there, right? So if we're looking at average age, menopause is in Black women 49 to 50. But that transition point where people are starting to have symptoms on average is going to be those years before. The symptoms, hot flashes, for example, right? Those are going to be worst in the immediate years right before menopause. So it's the later years of perimenopause is different symptoms than the early years of perimenopause, where hormones are starting to fluctuate. So certainly in your 40s, yes, something is happening for most women.
Interesting. So I'll be 55 this year.
Wow.
And I've been premenopausal for a couple years. And I mean, because I didn't know the signs, I really thought I needed to be checked into a mental institute. Because I would just like, I would like, I would just like bite off someone's head. And then I didn't understand why I did it. And I would have to go back and say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. But I felt like I had like two separate personalities. I really did feel like I needed to be checked out. And that's not the symptom that people talk about when they talk about menopause. So share with us some symptoms that might come.
So that actually is one, but maybe it's one that's not talked about as much. So first of all, 55, you're later, right? You were past, which is partly why you look so young still, So the most common symptoms would be, and remember, a lot of these symptoms are related to a drop in estrogen, right? So the ovaries, as they age, produce estrogen at a less frequent and less dose. Testosterone levels also drop. So common symptoms, hot flashes, right? That's the one that everybody classically thinks of, this warm flush. And I mean, people have bad hot flashes having like 30 a day. Poor sleep, right? Night sweats, so that is important in of itself because sleep is tied to so many things, including cardiovascular health, including, people who sleep poorly have higher rates of obesity. These are all things, remember, that Black women are increased risk for. Black women actually have higher rates of obesity post-menopause than white women do. Maybe that's why. Worse symptoms, worse night sweats, maybe that's contributing. Vaginal dryness, that tends to be a little bit later after the hot flashes, but vaginal dryness, and again, Black women often experience vaginal dryness at higher rates than white women do. Irritability, and that's what you're talking about. So, higher rates of irritability, higher rates of depression as these hormones fluctuate. Is it purely related to the hormone fluctuation, or is it related to some of the other symptoms where someone is not feeling good? Sometimes bladders start to have more problems, urinary frequency, going at night. So there's a lot of different symptoms that are sort of that. Some women experience less libido, and so there are so many things that are sort of happening during this time, and every woman experiences it differently. But the vast majority, 75%, will at least have hot flashes. That one's the most common across the board.
Okay. So when we're talking about symptoms, one of the questions that someone posed to me, they said, if you are having hot flashes, is there a natural way to combat that?
Yeah, so I think we're all looking for, natural, and natural many times means supplements. I'd say the true natural thing. So exercise has been shown to be beneficial. Wearing breathable clothes, just the practical things that help deal with the symptoms. If we're using natural from the point of supplements, right? Most studies will say that the supplements don't make any difference, and so people are often searching out, and the irony is that people are taking things in their body that they don't know what they are. Just because it's from a health food store doesn't make it safe, right? If you're labeling something, it's not being tested by anybody. It could be anything from China, right? But there's often this bias of thinking, hey, if I buy it at the food store and it says natural, it's safe. Right now, with that said, you're going to have many anecdotes of people saying, hey, I feel better when I took XYZ. And that's okay, right? In the trials, that hasn't been the case. Because remember, when we do clinical trials, if I give people sugar pills in a clinical trial, there's a significant percentage of those people who will feel better. Right? Yeah. So at the end of the day, if you're taking something that's not going to hurt you, that's the key, and you feel better, I don't care. As long, if that's what is the right answer for you. But unfortunately, in most trials, those natural herbs haven't made a big difference.
Wow. Yeah, you just shot down a lot of things that I've been told. You totally annihilated it, right? But I guess it really boils down to the science. And so I totally get what you're saying. It may help one person and it may not. And it could just be psychological that you took this that was said it was for that, and now
Yes.
you feel better. So
That's right.
I don't know.
So
ahead.
let me say something else on that topic, because the next question, one that I get a lot as a physician, and many of our audience have probably gone in, and it seems logical. People will often come in and say, can you test my hormones? Right. And so people that sell hormones do that. Right. There are a lot of people out there that are selling cash pay sort of hormone products.
Okay, wait. What do you mean? Please explain that, because I've never heard anyone say that. So what do you mean, test my hormones?
So many patients come in because they're having the symptoms that you're having, and they think it's directly correlated to a hormone level. And so if you measure a level, then you can, the idea of personalized medicine, I can give you exactly the right amount of hormone that you need. Right. Mm-hmm. The biggest fallacy in that argument is, remember, in perimenopause, your hormones are fluctuating. And hormones change throughout the menstrual cycle. So for all the people that are coming in asking to be tested, or because they went to someone else who tested their hormones and told them they need to be on this regimen, for the most part, that's not backed in science, because we treat symptoms, we don't treat hormone levels, because hormone levels fluctuate throughout the cycle, right? Now, when you're postmenopausal, different, because they're not there, right? Because that's what defines menopause, as very low levels of estrogen. That's a different argument. But in that perimenopausal transition, always be careful about the guy who's measuring the hormones, because he's going to create the right cocktail for you. That's a little bit of a marketing thing.
So I'm learning a lot, but the one thing that sticks out to me is that menopause is the day that you stop having a menstrual cycle.
For 1 year. For 1 year. That's the definition. Okay. No cycle for 1 year. That's the day you're menopausal. So either you're premenopausal or postmenopausal after that.
Okay. Now, for the women that, whatever reason had a hysterectomy,
Yep.
So then, you don't necessarily have that.
That's right. So you treat, remember, I say we treat based on symptoms. We don't treat based upon a status. So in other words, if the idea was that everybody that was menopausal needed to be on hormone replacement therapy, that would be an important distinction. But that's not the case. If you're 48 and you had a hysterectomy and you're having terrible hot flashes, I'm going to offer you management of those hot flashes. I don't care if you're officially menopausal or not, because it's not relevant. We're treating the symptom.
Okay. So, and I'm going to get to my next question, but this menopause topic is really hot. And so, and women don't talk about it enough. So I definitely want to make sure I deep dive. There are women who have had the procedure where they can't have any more children. They have the hysterectomy.
Okay.
And so, and just correct me if I'm wrong, if they take the ovaries, then it forces you into menopause.
That's right. So
but if they leave them, then you kind of like go through the natural course of things. And just talk to me about the difference, like the forced menopause, and then what to expect if the eggs stay.
So if, it used to be many years ago that if you had a hysterectomy, we almost said, hey, you should just take your ovaries out because there's a risk of cancer or something, right? Now, what the data overwhelmingly says is that even when you are menopausal in the early years, your ovaries are producing enough hormone that it actually has benefit. So women that have their ovaries removed for no reason, they actually have a higher risk of dying of heart disease and those other things. So if you're a younger woman who, for really the reason you're having your hysterectomy is because of bleeding or something else, we want you to save your ovaries, right? Because it makes you stay healthier longer, right? Now, if you leave your ovaries behind, for the most part, your hormone change will be similar to what you would do in a natural state. You just don't have the bleeding problems. Now, if you have a hysterectomy, you tend to have menopause a little bit earlier because there is some blood supply that's shared between the uterus and the ovary. But we're talking about maybe a 1 year earlier than normal. But otherwise, the transition would be similar.
Okay. So, but you go into a full blown menopause.
That's right. If you take your ovaries out, it is immediate. And that's the hardest, right? Because remember, when in natural menopause, you're transitioning, you're fluctuating, going from normal to nothing overnight usually is dramatic symptoms. So that surgical menopause is not gradual. It's probably the hardest to transition into.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Woo. Okay. So let's deep dive into hormone replacement
Yeah,
therapy, or as it's called, HRT.
sure.
Is that safe?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it depends on each individual. So 30 years ago, we thought that every woman should be on hormone replacement therapy because there was data that it seemed
That
that
we were
hormone,
crazy?
well, that no, kept people young, right? So if you think about it,
Okay.
men have higher rates of heart disease than women. And we thought maybe part of this was the estrogen. So we put everybody on hormones. And back then, the most common source, it was natural, but sort of, it came from pregnant horses, right? So Premarin came from the urine of pregnant horse. That was the form of estrogen that was the most popular. So Premarin with a progesterone, the synthetic, that was what everybody was on. It was called Prempro. So they
Okay.
did this very large study, of thousands and thousands of women, called the Women's Health Initiative. Surprisingly, they showed that the women that were on both hormones actually had a higher risk of heart disease, a higher risk of breast cancer. And so automatically everybody got scared and everybody was on the hormone suddenly stopped, right?
Hmm.
As we started analyzing that data more and more, we started learning some things. First of all, the women in that trial were a lot older than who normally starts hormones. They were actually in their 60s. That's not who normally starts hormones, right? Usually this is in the early menopause. So the later thinking really came to be, if you have heart disease already and you start hormones, it makes it worse. But
Hmm.
maybe if you start it early, it actually might be protective against heart disease. So,
Hmm.
so we kind of changed that. And the other thing that really pushed is, you've heard the term bioidentical hormones. So what bioidentical means is that we are giving you this, not the horse urine, we're giving you not synthetic like birth control pills, but we're giving you the exact same estrogen and progesterone that your body produces. And that's kind of what the most common method is today, is natural, quote unquote, estrogen and progesterone. Go ahead, Kim.
And where is that estrogen coming from? If it's
So,
the natural,
yep.
it's not produced by my
It
body.
isn't.
So,
It is produced in the lab, but this chemical structure is exactly what your estrogen is. So it is exactly, your body would know the difference. And so nowadays, estradiol, for example, is that form that you'll see in more forms. So there are a lot of benefits of being on hormone replacement therapy. We see, interestingly, seems to be a lower risk of colon cancer. We know it protects your bones. We know quality of life for some, there's some women you can't take the hormones away because they feel so good, right?
hmm.
Mood is better, they're sleeping better, their energy is better,
Hmm.
their libido is better. You can't
Hmm.
necessarily measure that.
Hmm.
But the health benefits, maybe a trend toward lower dementia, colon cancer, as we said, bone protection. But it does make sense that the risk of breast cancer might go up marginally, right? Because breast cancer is hormonally dependent. The risk of stroke does go up a little bit. So there's a balance in all this. And so we look at you as an individual and say, what is your risk factor? You're diabetic with terrible hypertension. Yeah, maybe HRT is not the right choice for you because you
Right.
have high, cardiovascular risk. But if
Hmm.
you're an otherwise healthy person, there might be a lot of benefits. So it really is a good conversation between you and your doctor, and say, are you a good candidate? And if you are, the risk is thankfully pretty low. And there's a lot of benefit too.
Wow. So yeah, you are definitely blowing my mind. If there was like an emoji that can come up and sure. This is a lot of good information, and
I
I
know.
was
And I
definitely
talk fast, so hopefully people are keeping up. But
well, it's good, and so I kind of just want to, deep dive just a little bit more, and so I know you gave us the reasons why we should be on it, right? Is there a time that you should come off of it? I mean, if you've been on it for 10 years,
yep.
what does that mean as you get older
Sure.
and you're on hormone replacement?
So, with that biggest risk being the cardiovascular disease, it seems like if you're on HRT or on estrogen, you started early, it might actually be protective. So I think you constantly reassess. Our official societies, the American College of OBGYN, the Menopause Society, they generally say be on it the shortest amount of time that you need to control your symptoms. So I
Hmm.
guess think of it as you're doing it for symptom control, not just because, right? In other words, we're not just treating the menopausal state, we're treating the symptoms of menopause. But if you feel good on them, you're otherwise low risk, or when you come off, you have terrible side effects, it is reasonable as an individual decision to have that conversation with a doctor, and it's going to be different for each person on how long you should be on it.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Okay. So let's turn the corner a little bit. What about testosterone in women?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in many times, like the groundswell of stuff comes from like outside of traditional medicine. And I think this is where testosterone came from. So the first caveat in all this is, again, those major medical societies, endocrine, menopause society, American College of OBGYN, none of them advocate for testosterone replacement in women universally. However, in the lay community, people are looking, right? We're all trying to feel our best. We're all wanting to lose weight and have better muscle recovery, have had more energy and more libido. And testosterone potentially does do all those things, right? And so there's a lot of practitioners out there that are dosing testosterone looking, because people are looking for a solution for some of what they feel. Now, again, in large trials, we don't have evidence that it does those things, right? And we also know, I think the one caution I tell people that do testosterone replacement is be very cautious about being in uncharted waters, right? I often will see people coming from outside providers that they're doing pellets, which are these things that you place in your body. You can dose incredibly high. So I see women with testosterone levels routinely of 400. That is in the male range, right? And so, we have no long-term data about what high testosterone will do. We know, testosterone has potential.
Why are they doing that?
That everybody is trying to feel better, right? They're seeking out. They've read that that your energy is better. So many women struggle with weight loss, et cetera. So we're looking for solutions that might impact things, and it might help in some regard, but everything has a trade-off, right? And so the problem is doing extremely high doses. You might feel good in the beginning, but then you kind of become resistant to that dose, and so everything's a trade-off. I just say, do your due diligence, do the research. But if all the medical societies are telling someone one thing, be wary of the other people that say ignore that. I always say there's always snake oil salesmen, throughout human history. I think this is becoming one of the new snake oil things of the time is dosing women with very high doses of testosterone.
And so if you're taking it, are there certain body changes that you can expect?
Yeah. So at physiologic levels, it might be or probably is safe. So let's just say, this comes up to me all the time. People are looking for wellness, and I've evolved, to be honest, a little bit past what the medical societies say. The first thing in medicine is say do no harm. So if somebody comes in and they're have some of the symptoms that could be testosterone related, have a measured low testosterone, and then I dose them and put them in a physiologic range, meaning where they used to be normal, and they feel better, I'm okay with that if they're otherwise a healthy person. I just struggle with the people that are on 10 times a physiologic dose, because that's where we have no idea where that goes. And to your point, sometimes they feel better, but we see things like clitoromegaly, meaning a clitoris that grows where it looks like a little penis. We see facial hair growth. We see all those are side effects potentially of being on very high doses of testosterone, and some of that will never go back to normal.
Right. Oh my goodness, that's interesting. Okay, so those are the two most common types of external
hormones. Yeah.
Signs that they've been on it in high doses.
Yes. Acne, facial hair, body hair, and worst case, that clitoromegaly.
Now, are they aggressive? Like, are they like, they?
So there are, each individual is different in their response, but certainly that's one of the things that people complain about is increased, irritability or anger. There are some women that are more sensitive to testosterone than others. So that absolutely is a potential side effect of high dose testosterone.
Wow. Okay. So, the topic again is hormones and the change. So typically, and in your experience, when do you see that the female libido changes?
Yeah. And this is, that's a great question. Libido is so complicated. And, for men, many times this is purely a function of testosterone and blood flow, right? So men with ED, it's a plumbing problem. We can fix a plumbing problem, right? women, hey, Village, you guys are so much more complicated than we are. Libido is rarely a simple thing as in it's one hormone. And for better or worse, because a lot of times people come in and say, hey, doc, I've lost my libido. Can you give me testosterone? Will that make it better? That's been studied. And the answer is generally no. It's not as simple.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that are factor of. Now, we know that in the perimenopausal transition, for a lot of people, their libido does go down. But is that because you're not sleeping well? Is that because you're not feeling well? Is that because, some of these other things in life? It's not a clear cut. If I give you HRT, you will for sure get your libido back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, interestingly, there's a couple of new medications on the market that do have some benefit of improving female libido. And it's not testosterone. They're not hormone. There's something called ADDY. If you want to Google it, it's ADDYI. And so that's the first pill that came on the market that helps with female libido and desire. So we look at underlying causes. Is there an underlying depression? Is it because you're exhausted all the time and there's no time for it?
Mm-hmm.
Is it because sex is painful? In which case there's treatments that really help with that. So it really depends on the underlying source. I wish I can say it's as simple as your testosterone level is low or your estrogen level is low, and we can replace that. There's so many different factors involved.
Wow. Okay. Well, listen, we're getting close to the end of the show. If you had to define libido for me, what is the quick definition for libido?
Yeah, so I think libido is basically the desire to have sex, right? Mm-hmm. So there are women that don't have the desire, but then when it's actually happening, pleasure is there. They have the ability to orgasm. Mm-hmm. But so libido is the desire, but then there's the other component of it. And I think we should talk about that too. Sex is important, right? Sex has an underlying purpose. God wouldn't have created, or nature wouldn't have created us with the ability to orgasm if there was not some, reason for it, right? Mm-hmm. We do know as women age that ability to orgasm often gets harder. It's under 30% of women that have the ability to orgasm with most times they have intercourse. Now, is part of that, decreased sensitivity to the clitoris? Is that, vaginal laxity that happens from childbirth? 1 in 2 women leak urine at the age of 50. That's a bit of a sobering statistic. There's so many different things that have come out on the market that are new. We've keep learning new things. We have non-surgical options. Google Vivive. It's a treatment we offer in the office that is non-surgical, that improves vaginal laxity and in worldwide trials, in a painless way, improves stress incontinence, which is the leaking with cough, sneeze, laugh. There's a new treatment on the market, which is a sound wave therapy called Cleovana, which improves clitoral stimulation. And, you have almost 100% improvement in the ability to orgasm after 4 painless treatments. So, libido is one part, but just sexual response, I think, is another part, because sexual health and wellness is also an important part of who we are and an important part of relationships.
Oh, wow. Now that's a whole episode all by itself.
It can be, for sure.
Clearly. So, well, listen, I am so grateful that you, accepted my invite, my unorthodox invite.
I'm so glad you reached out. This is so fun.
Yeah. So, for the Village, for those of you that don't know, I met Dr. Thopol on LinkedIn, and so it was just it's an awesome tool. It's a great way to network. And I'm just so honored that you accepted the invite and decided to come on to Conversations with Kim talk show. So, any final words?
No, I enjoyed it. If you guys have questions, reach out to me. I think this connect information at the bottom there was actually more about menopause. If you just go to my website is riverplaceobgyn.com. And if you have questions or just want to reach out or curious on some of the things, we have a lot of information on our website too. And this has been awesome, Village.
And you said that's
riverplaceobgyn.com.
riverplaceobgyn.com.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy.
So, oh my gosh, you all, he is phenomenal. That was such a great and informative segment. I definitely got to figure out when we can get him back. We're kind of booked for now because I got some stuff lined up for you. You're not going to believe it. But listen, Next week is going to be a holiday, so I won't be with you. But the week after that, listen, I'm coming back strong, and I got a super duper surprise for you that you don't want to miss. So again, just remember that silence creates distance, but conversations with Kim builds the village. Bye-bye.